Now I'll go into another room. Well, it hasn't quite started. What TV?
No keyboard through the minion, please. Hello, good evening, everybody. I hope you're able to hear me.
Loud and clear.
Good. Thank you for joining us this evening for this evening service and this minyan. I hope you're able to see the service on the screen in front of you. I'm going to give you very brief instructions on how to maximize this if you haven't participated in a service online before. You should at the moment be, the instructions differ slightly from device to device. I can't help you much with an iPad, but this should work for a PC or Mac. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Keren-Black, by the way, and I'm the rabbi at the Baeck Center, where Marlies has been such an intrinsic part of the fabric of the place for so many years. So basically what you should see on the screen in front of you at the moment on the left-hand side is the prayer book, and on the right-hand side you can probably see a small picture of me. If you look at it, you will see two gray lines to the immediate left. If you use your pointer, your mouse, and point at those lines, you can, and you should, when you point at them, get a gray line up and down the screen. If you left click whilst that gray line is showing and then pull to the left whilst left clicking, it will make the picture of me bigger and bigger, and you can move the prayer book right over to the left hand side. Not that you necessarily need a bigger picture of me, but if you then go to the very top and click gallery view or view, you'll get a picture of the different congregants, different people who are in the congregation or who are present this evening. I am going to, yeah, Shireen, would you like me to highlight you or not?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to commence our service, and we do stand and sit, as you know, during the service, and our advice as of a medical friend last night is that instead of saying please virtually stand in the service or stand, would ask you to stand, because apparently we need to be doing more sitting and standing, because we need to avoid DVT, and because we're doing less walking around than we probably usually are. So when we get to it, I will ask you to please stand and adjust my camera to suit. And we'll mute everybody during the service, but please feel free to join in throughout. And we commence on page 2. If you're following in our prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, you'll find it on page 2. We are called unto life, destiny uncertain, yet we offer thanks for what we know, for health and healing, for labor and repose, for renewal of beauty in earth and sky, for that blend of human holy which inspires compassion, and for hope eternal, promising light, for life, for health, for hope, for beautiful, bountiful blessing, all praise to the source of being. Baruch atah Adonai, makor nefesh kol chai. And we read, tell them I'm struggling to sing with angels who hint at it in black words printed on old paper, gold-edged by time. Tell them I wrestle the mirror every morning. Tell them I sit here invisible in space, nose running, coffee cold and bitter. I tell them everything, and everything is never enough. Tell them I'm davening and voices rise up from within to startle children. Tell them I walk off into the woods to sing. Tell them I sing loudest next to waterfalls. Tell them the books get fewer, words go deeper. Some take months to get through. Tell them there are moments when it's all perfect, above and below it's perfect. Even in moments in between where sparks in space, terrible, beautiful sparks in space, are merely metaphors for the void between one pore and another. And now we ask you to stand for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat kriyat shema l'hamlicho b'levav shalem u'leyachtov b'lev tov u'le'avdo b'nefesh chafatza. Our praise to you, Eternal One, who brings the evening evermore, wisely parting the gates of time, ushering in the seasons, arraying with care the stars in the sky, unfurling light, then darkness, then light. Gently you fold the day into the night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Living God, your reign arches over us. Your light is everlasting. Our praise to you, Eternal One, who brings the evening evermore. Baruch atah Adonai, ha-ma'ariv haravim. We read Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chokim u'mishpatim otanu limarta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbenu uv'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha. V'nismach b'divrei Toratcha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu v'orech yamenu. U'vahem negeh yomam v'layla. V'havatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamenu. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. All goodness and truth are yours, O God. May no evil estrange us from you. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. The Eternal One said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all God's commandments and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. L'ma'an tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kadoshim le'loheichem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher anoch הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני לכם אמת. We read together, all this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign and Savior, who delivers us from oppressors' hands and saves us from tyrants' fists. You work wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our footsteps. You performed miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. You led your people Israel out from their midst to freedom for all time. When your children witnessed your dominance, they praised your name in gratitude. And they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously. Mi chamocha ba'elem Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nor tehilot oseh pele. Malchutcha ra'u banecha boker yam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. זה אלי אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד, חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Now we invite you to stand in a moment after we've done Hashkivenu, not quite yet. And we read Hashkivenu and then we'll stand for Tefillah. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and rise us up, O our sovereign, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. God, our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Baruch atah Adonai, shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. And now we come to the words of the tefillah. Please stand. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi tehillatcha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel, Elokei Leah, El Agadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imachot, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו בשמי עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמנתה לחיות מת. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. And we come to a shortened collection of the blessings for the intermediate blessings of the tefillah. Give us insight, eternal our God, to understand your ways and consecrate our hearts to revere you. From our sins, redeem us with forgiveness. From pain and sorrow, keep us far. Bestow upon us your earth's abundance and gather our exiles from earth's four corners. To those who stray, bring correction. Upon the lawless, place your hand. Let the righteous rejoice in the building of your city and the flowering of your redemption. Before we call comes your reply. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea tefillah. Blessed is the Eternal One who hearkens to prayer. ותצא אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל, תפילתם באהבה תקבל, ותהי רצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך, אל קרוב לכל קוראה, פני אל עבדיך וחוננו, שפוך רוחך עלינו, ותחזינה עינינו בשובך, לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, המחזיר שכינתו לציון. We read together, we acknowledge with thanks that you are our eternal God and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lahodot. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam, ki ata hu melech adon l'chol hashalom. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Please be seated now as we have some moments of reflection, and you might like to read the translation of Elohai or Elohai in Hebrew. יהיו לו רצון אמרי והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני, צורי וגואלי. And we say our prayer for peace with perhaps a special focus on tomorrow's ceremony, where Israel will expand its peace to twice as many Arab nations as it's had all these years with Jordan and Egypt, as it signs a peace agreement with the UAE and Bahrain. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens make peace for us, all Israel, and all who inhabit the earth. Amen. And we come now to the special prayers for the house of mourning, or the virtual house for mourning. O God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to revert to dust, saying, return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. God, you redeem the soul of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. We read this powerful and loved poem by Rabbi Alvin Stein. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. And life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey from birth to death to life everlasting. And we read Psalm 23, a psalm of David. With God as my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in paths of righteousness for the sake of your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. In Psalm 121, Esa einai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Eternal One, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming, now and forever. And we come now to El Male Rachamim, and we ask you to stand as we do the memorial prayer. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Ba'amramim, Hametzei Manucha Nachona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Tohorim Zohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Miriam Bat Uri Va'alitzia, Shehalcha Leholama, Ba'al HaRachamim Yastireha, V'seker Kanafav Leolamim, Vayitzro B'tzro HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanoach B'shalom Al Mishkava, V'nama, Amen. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. And now please be seated. We have a few pictures here of Marlies, and we're going to hear now some words about her amazing life. So at this point, I'm going to read a précis of a short version of the eulogy that I gave at the funeral this afternoon. And then we're going to hear, I believe, from Shireen and from Jonathan and Michelle, if that's the plan. Marlies was born in Berlin in 1929 to Alice, a Berliner, and Fred Richard Benfey from Mainz. Both of them were doctors of economics and had met at university. They were a very assimilated Berlin Jewish family, living in the beautiful area of Charlottenburg, location of the famous palace and fine museums, until, under the Nuremberg laws, Marlies was forced to change to a Jewish school. Marlies remembered Kristallnacht in 1938 when she was 9.5. Her father had been tipped off and went into hiding, and she could recall driving into town the next morning and asking her mother why all the windows were smashed. She reassured her that by this time they realized that they had to get out, and in all likelihood that journey was involved with the departure. They managed to get to Copenhagen, where a distant relative was able to get them papers to come to Melbourne, where Marlies attended St. Michael's Church of England Girls' Grammar School. She got a place at Melbourne University to study science and became a biochemist at the Alfred Hospital. She had a blind date at the Wheatsoe Ball with Lou Cohen, and in 1952 they got engaged. They married on the 5th of November moving to North Baldwin, where they also joined Temple Beth Israel's satellite group in the eastern suburbs, which developed into the Leo Baeck Center. Marlies and Lou were so excited when baby Shireen came along in 1957, and she stopped working at the Alfred, though she continued to work on the finance and office management for the family business. Marlies became heavily involved with Wheatso, and she was a founding member of the Netanya Group in 1954 and its president in 1964, and was involved with Wheatso both statewide and federally, and with the UIA, and was enormously proud of Israel and passionate about the amazing work that Wheatso does there. Her list of community positions and responsibilities is simply too lengthy to read in full here, but ultimately led to the much-deserved award of her OAM on Australia Day this year for service to the Jewish community. Quite typically, Shireen tells me that Marlies had to be persuaded to accept the honour, arguing that she had done nothing out of the ordinary or that anyone else wouldn't also do. She and Lou were so proud when Shireen and Sam were married, and excited when their first grandchild, Jonathan, and then Michelle arrived. She was always Nana to them, and she and Lou would visit often and look after them, especially useful when Shireen and Sam were away. Lou died in 2001, and Marlies lost her life partner, but with the support of Shireen and Sam and her many friends and colleagues and her 2 grandchildren, she typically and philosophically accepted the new reality and got on with all her commitments and responsibilities. Having had her as a congregant, as well as having her pay my salary every month, I can vouch for her kindness and consideration and compassion for others, and her accuracy to the cent, and her unwavering sense of right, justice, and fairness. I knew also how proud she was of her little family, her grandchildren, and especially you, Shireen, so evidently carrying the mantle of community leadership, and whilst being a busy lawyer and mother as well. The list of awards and recognitions is impressive and completely justified. Even a partial list of work and responsibilities is remarkable and quite exhausting even to read through. You'd have to be incredibly intelligent, determined, organized, capable, thorough, patient, calm, modest, and community-minded to have done even half of this. And Marlies was all those things. She was also fiercely independent, insisting on staying in her own home right until she went into hospital for the last time. We are lucky to be able to conclude with Marlies' own words when awarded the OAM in January. She said, "I'm delighted and feel very honored to receive the OAM, but frankly, I'm amazed to be awarded this medal, as what I have done is much the same as countless other members of our community are doing or have done." As someone who had the good fortune to be able to leave Germany together with her parents in the very last days of 1938, I am deeply grateful for the very fortunate life I have had. My parents were both actively involved in the community and encouraged me to be likewise, so this award really belongs in great part to them. My communal involvement has given me the satisfaction of being able to make just a very small contribution to the life of our community, and thus to Jewish continuity. Modest to the end. Zecher tzodeket livracha. May the memory of a righteous person be a blessing to all who knew her, to all she's influenced. Amen. And we now turn over to Shireen, who is going to speak to us about her mother in a more direct personal sense.
In the last days of her life and since her death, I've received so many beautiful messages talking about my mother and her contribution to our community. I wish she could have heard what so many have said about her, because for her, she really felt she didn't do anything significant. In fact, as Jonathan said, when she received the letter advising her that she'd been awarded an OAM, she was surprised. And a couple of days later, we had an argument about whether she should accept the honour. It was one of the few occasions on which I actually won, and she accepted the honour. I know we were also grateful the Government House offered to award the OEM over Zoom, enabling her to receive it in March, surrounded in the virtual and screen sense by her family. She told me she spent the whole of the day on a high, and I'm so glad that she got to enjoy the recognition, which was so richly deserved. I was always very conscious of the role that my mother played in the wider Jewish community and her strong identification with her faith. Some years ago, Jonathan completed a Roots project, which included an interview with my mother. In searching for some information over the last couple of days, I found a copy of the interview and was struck by her response to one question. When Jonathan asked her to describe her family's Jewish observance, she said, "Well, I would say that in Germany you had no choice. You had to be conscious of the fact that you were Jewish. And once we came to Australia, my parents acknowledged the fact that even though they were not observant, since after all they had come to Australia because they were Jews, they wanted to identify with the community." My mother was so grateful to Australia for giving her and her parents a home, and felt a keen need to give back both to the Jewish community and to support many organisations within the wider community. My childhood memories are of my mother going out to meetings, leaving my father to finish the washing up, which he did happily as he was immensely proud of her contribution. This did end in disaster one evening when he emptied a large saucepan of dirty water which was on the bench, only to discover later it was chicken soup. If you've ever tasted my mother's chicken soup, you will know what a disaster that was. My mother was probably not the typical doting Jewish grandmother, but I know that she was immensely proud of Jonathan and Michelle and what they have achieved in their careers. Especially in the last year or two, as her hearing deteriorated, telephone calls became increasingly difficult. But I know she treasured the opportunity to talk to Jonathan by phone from Sydney and to see Michelle on Shabbat. The lockdown period, of course, made that very difficult. And while in many ways the community came to her during that time, I know she missed the face-to-face contact of Michelle and her partner, Nick, and the opportunity for Jonathan and Anna, his partner, to come to Melbourne. We were lucky to celebrate her 91st birthday all together just before the first lockdown, and the memory of that meal is a precious one. My mother was always somewhat bemused that I should marry a man who had the same career as she herself had had as a hospital biochemist. I know she was grateful to Sam for all he did for her, especially in the last few years. My mother missed my father greatly, but she made a new life for herself, travelling widely. She never lost the desire to experience new places, and while Europe was her most visited destination, her last trip was to China and Japan. I was so lucky to travel with her a couple of times in later years. One trip included Berlin and Mainz, where she took me to the various places that she remembered from her childhood. That trip is a very precious memory, and I know that Jonathan, who made a similar trip with her, also had wonderful memories of that time. On the other occasion, we spent 6 days travelling in the north of Israel, me in a moon boot after a broken foot, and her a little unsteady on her feet. What a great combination we made. I still remember the really slippery caves at Rosh Hanikra, where it was almost a competition to see which of us fell first. I'm glad to report that neither of us did. My mother had a natural affinity with figures. Both in her work with my father and later, she was the one who managed the accounts, and she managed her own financial affairs right until the last few days, issuing me with instructions from her lockdown rehabilitation room. As Jonathan mentioned at the funeral, we had a standing family tradition when my father was alive, that whenever we went out to dinner, she would tell him what the bill would be before he opened it. Experience taught that if it wasn't very close to the figure that she had said, the bill should be checked carefully, as it was usually wrong. Her role as honorary treasurer, both for the Witzer Federation, the Leo Baeck Centre and the Raoul Wallenberg unit, was a natural extension of that talent. Above all, my mother was my mentor. It was to her that I took my communal dilemmas, and she always provided me with wise advice born of many years of knowing the community and the players in it. I will miss her wise counsel and hope that I continue to uphold the standards of community involvement and generosity she set. One of my girlfriends wrote to me over the last few days saying, "She was an amazing woman, small in stature, but big in her contribution to her community. I don't think that anything could be a better epitaph to her. Her memory truly is a blessing. Zikrona livracha.
Thank you, beautiful Shireen. And now, do we have Jonathan on from Sydney?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks. So as the rabbi and mum have said, Nana was a strong, intelligent, determined, community-minded and caring woman who gave so much to her family, friends and community. Michelle and I just wanted to say a few quick words about how much she meant to us, in particular how much of a strong influence she's had on our lives. For my part, Nana certainly influenced me through her cooking. She was a great cook who was always keen to try new and interesting recipes. I have strong memories of being a child in a kitchen and helping with, I guess, inverted commas, her prepare family meals. This has certainly contributed to my love of food and cooking throughout my life. On a more substantive note, one of my strongest memories with Nana was traveling to Berlin with her in 2007 during my gap year. Nana took me to see where her family lived and where she'd grown up and spent the first few years of her life. It was really special to see this, particularly in the context of all the work she and her parents did to help build a new community in Melbourne and Australia. It's something that's something I know will be eternally proud of. Her community mindedness also certainly influenced the next generation, as evidenced by the amount of work that mum has done in the community and continues to do. It's also influenced mine and Michelle's choices, with each of us choosing to try to work towards the public good in the public service and the arts, respectively. We certainly have a lot more to do to try to live up to and emulate even a fraction of what Nana did, but it continues to be our own little way of trying to honour her example and her work. And I'll pass over to Michelle for a few more words.
Hi, thank you, Jono. As my mother and brother have suggested, Nana was not a typical doting Jewish buba or safta. From a very early age, she taught me and my brother to call her Nana, possibly a result of her very assimilated childhood in Germany. As we have all mentioned, Nana was a strong and determined woman, but she was also a very cultured one, a lover of literature and art. As a child, I have memories of her going through her art books and showing me her favorite works and beautiful antiques that she'd collected in her house over the years. Though, as she mentioned to me one night a year or so ago, art ended for her in the 1880s. She was still very supportive of me continuing my career related to all art, modern and contemporary included. And though we may differ in the avenues through which we give back to our community, I hope to make her proud and continue her legacy of giving. Moreover, I will always be thankful to Nana for teaching me to be a strong woman. Those of you who know my mother will know that's a bit of a tradition for the Cohen-Hamber family. A German Jewish refugee who went on to become a biochemist in the 1950s is a hard bar to live up to, but I hope at least an ounce of her courage, resilience, and conviction to do the right thing can live through me and my brother. Thank you.
Rabbi, you're muted.
Muted.
There we go. Better? So I just wanted to acknowledge Jonathan's partner, Anna, that we saw with him, and also Michelle's partner, Nick. There's that pictures again, and you see the medal here with a very proud Shireen with her mother. And we continue now. I'm asking you to stand as we come to the Aleinu. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושיע ויקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Now we come to the words of the Kaddish, and we read the meditations. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes, not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. We think of all our loved ones at this point whose death has recently taken from us, those who died at their seasons in years past, and those whom we've drawn into our hearts with our own. But at this moment, as we invite Shireen to lead us in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, we remember especially Maurice Cohen, OAM, Zichrona Livracha.
יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברח ירתה וליך מלכותה, חי הון וימהון וחי מהון לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם וביי עמיה, יתברא וישתבח ויתפאר ויתממן ויתעשה, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריך הוא. לילל מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבעתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו
אמן.
ויהי שלום הרבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו
אמן.
עושה שלום ברמיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
And it only remains now for me to say to you as the mourners, may God have compassion upon you, grant you consolation with all the mourners, and will wish you a long life, good health, and Shana Tova, a happy new year to you, Shireen, to Sam, and to Jonathan, and to Michelle, and to the family, and to all of you who are here this evening. Shana Tova. Thank you for being with us.